I believe the message there is we're fucked. I am not a scientist, but I believe that's the
Sounds like we're in trouble, though.
I think they're big asteroids.
Yeah, big ones, yeah.
Anyway, we wanted to have Nathan come out today because that was a really interesting story in the New York Times, and I called him and I said, can you just come and talk about what you did there? And it was great because he really, he gave a speech many, many years about tsunamis in the ocean, which everyone sort of ridiculed, and he turned out to be right. So
yeah, he's given speeches about Hawaii splitting in half and how dinosaurs managed to have sex.
Yeah, so we thought it was kind of an interesting, especially given our next guest. And we're really pleased to have him here. I've been driving him crazy to come. I bother him at parties.
How does that make him different than anyone else?
Nobody, but I really bother Elon a lot. But we had him a couple of years ago at the All Things D conference. It was one of our biggest, best interviews.
He was great.
It was great right now to bookend him with Jeff Bezos and him in terms of visionaries in the internet. And I think a lot of people think that of Elon. He's doing some very exciting and substantive things with both of his companies, SpaceX and Tesla. And so, without further ado, Elon Musk. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Elon, let me start by saying we're very glad you're here, safe and sound.
Thanks. Unfortunately, I had to, sorry for being a bit late. I was I flew here with the landing gear down because it was like some kind of landing gear issue.
Landing gear was stuck?
There's some kind of warning light, and my pilot said that if they retracted the landing gear, it may not go back down again. So I thought
this
probably
happens,
best to leave
this
it down.
Even happens to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, landing gear problems of various kinds.
Anyway, we're happy to wait for you, and we're glad you got here safe.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to see you guys.
Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. You kept your promise, which was nice.
Of course.
I think you were drunk when you promised me, but that's okay. I'll take it. So, in the couple of years since you've come, you've done some astonishing things in terms of substantive stuff with both your companies. Let's start talking about space and what you've been doing there. Obviously, you've had some success landing the rocket. You've done a bunch of other things where people thought you weren't going to be successful. Talk a little bit about sort of the progress you think you've made with SpaceX.
Sure. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things where I think I didn't think we'd be successful. And the most significant thing is being able to land an orbit-class rocket boost stage and bring it both back to Cape Canaveral, land on land, and be able to land on a drone ship out in the ocean. There is a bit of an education process that's needed to understand orbital dynamics, because a lot of people are confused of like, why the heck are you landing a rocket on a ship in the ocean? That seems pretty inconvenient. And the reason is because that going up and staying up is actually about velocity horizontal to the Earth's surface. So there's a huge difference between space and orbit. Like space, you could think of as like, say, being the international waters boundary for the Pacific Ocean. Like if you go, 100 miles offshore, you're technically out of coastal waters. Now you're in the Pacific.
Right.
So it's like technically you're in the Pacific, but orbit is like circumnavigating the globe. Right. It's a really giant difference. And the reason that things go up and stay up is because you're zooming around the Earth so fast that your outward radial acceleration is equal to the inward acceleration of gravity. And so those balance out and you have a net zero gravity. So when you see the space station, the thing that's little sort of counterintuitive is that the space station is actually zooming around the Earth at 17,000 miles an hour.
Even though it seems like it just...
It seems really still, but it's moving really, really fast. To put that into perspective, a bullet from a .45 gun, handgun, is just below the speed of sound. So the space station is going more than 25 times faster than that. And that's what's needed actually to go up and stay up. And that's why there's the term escape velocity, not escape altitude. There's no such thing as an escape altitude. There's only an escape velocity.
You need to be a certain speed to escape the gravity of the Earth.
Yeah, you can think of gravity as kind of a funnel in space-time. Think of it like a coin funnel. Like it's very much like that in but it's obviously a sort of a four-dimensional coin funnel. But if you spin a marble or a coin on a coin funnel, when it's far out, it sort of spins slowly, and then as it gets closer, it spins faster and faster. And if you were to start at the bottom of the coin funnel and you wanted to exit, you'd spin it horizontally, and it would spin out, and that's really how you get to orbit. So
how does that
gravity
relate
well
to
is like a funnel.
Why you want to land on a ship in the ocean?
Because in order to get to orbit, all that matters is your horizontal velocity. Your altitude doesn't really matter. In fact, the force of gravity at say the sort of nominal boundary of space, 100 kilometers, is almost exactly the same as it is on the surface of the Earth. So like if it's a few percent lower than the surface of the Earth. So in order to go up and stay up, the only thing that matters is how fast are you going horizontal to the Earth's surface. So you have that outward radial acceleration, or think of it maybe like tetherball or something like that. It's really that outward acceleration is the thing that matters. And so when the rocket is going to orbit, the only reason it's going up is to get out of the thick part of the atmosphere. Because at high velocity, the atmosphere is thick as molasses. And so it goes up very briefly, but if you look at a long exposure of the rocket's trajectory, you'll see it goes up, but immediately curves over and starts going horizontal. And so at the point at which the point at which the stages separate, there's two stages. The primary boost stage, which is the most expensive part of the rocket, the point at which that staging occurs can be, but it's going away from the launch site at 10 times the speed of sound. So in order to get back to the launch site, you would have to have enough fuel and oxygen to reverse out that velocity and boost back all the way to the launch site. And you just don't have, the physics of it don't really allow you to have that much. It's not about saving money on fuel or anything, it's just physically impossible. Because another sort of thing about if you're in space is that there's nothing to react against. So, like whereas an aircraft can circle very easily because it's reacting against air, in vacuum there's nothing to react against. So the only way to go back the other direction is to apply just as much energy as it took you to go. If you want to go backwards, you have to apply just as much energy as it took you to go forwards. Mm-hmm. In fact, well, twice as much, really, because you've got to zero it out, and then you've got to...
So you've got to land elsewhere.
Yeah, so bottom line is this thing is zinging out to sea at 10 times faster than a bullet.
At that point, it may well be over the ocean, because the ocean covers most of the...
Oh, it's actually, at the point of separation, it's not that far away. It's maybe 100 kilometers away from the launch site, but it is going like hell in the opposite, away from the launch site. So the only way to really land it is to have it continue on that arc, that ballistic arc, and then land far out to sea on a ship that's pre-positioned to a particular latitude and longitude, very, very precise, to within about a meter. And then the rocket will then go from vacuum through rarefied air at hypersonic velocity. So when it's in vacuum, it has to, obviously you can't use aerosurfaces. You have to use nitrogen jets to control the attitude and position. And then as it starts to encounter the air, we use grid fins, because grid fins look like sort of like a waffle. They work quite well across a wide regime, from both very high velocity hypersonics through supersonic, transonic, and subsonic. So it's hard to have aerosurfaces that work well across that entire regime. And then, so once the air forces become high, it uses the four grid fins to sort of control its attitude.
To land itself.
Yeah, it's controlling it's controlling pitch, yaw, and roll with the grid fins. And then those grid fins will then position it to where it's fairly close to the ship, and then it will light, in this case, 3 of the 9 engines to arrest the velocity, and then drop to 1 engine for precision right before landing.
Right. Okay.
So
that was
hard.
maybe a bit of a long explanation.
No, but okay, what we're going to get to is that's super fucking hard.
There's a video.
So why is that important? Why has this moment been important for you?
Well, so in order to reuse the boost stage, which is about 70% of the cost of the rocket, so that
which cost is that? How much is that?
Well, I mean, it's sort of on the order of $30 to $35 million.
Right. So you want to save that?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I tell my team, it's like imagine there was a pallet of cash that was plummeting through the atmosphere, and it was going to burn up and smash into tiny pieces. Would you try to save it?
Right.
Probably yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Right. Okay.
So we want to get it back, and that way we don't have to make another one.
Right.
And I think it's quite tragic if rockets get smashed into tiny pieces and land at the bottom of the ocean.
So can I ask a question? We've been going to space for 50 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Nobody until you started doing this, and Jeff Bezos' company has done it. The government never sort of saved the rockets.
Yeah.
They never saved the pallet of cash. Why not? And the Russians didn't either. I mean, what was the deal there?
Yeah, I mean, there was some attempt made to do that with the space shuttle, but there was no return. It's the first time that a rocket boost has returned to launch site from an orbital mission, and certainly the first time that there's been a landing on a ship out to sea.
But the regular rockets that went up that weren't designed like planes never tried to do this.
Right. The plane thing is not a good idea in my view. The plane, and the reason I think is, intuitively it seems like a plane should work, but actually if you consider that really every mode of transport has a design that is appropriate to its medium. And if you're in space, and then if you want to go somewhere other than Earth, there's also no runways. So these are important considerations. So that's why when they went to the moon, they used propulsive landing.
Right. But what I'm saying was when they built the space shuttle, it sort of looked like a kind of bulbous
I think that appealed to Congress. Yeah. Yeah.
They went, cool. That's cool.
Yeah. It looked like an airplane.
Can you explain Jeff Bezos?
Good one.
Jeff Bezos was here last night, and I asked him, what's the difference between what you're doing and what Elon Musk is doing? And he said, well, I think we have, I think he used the word like-minded in the general sense of it, and then he went on to explain some differences. But he talked about, and correct me if I'm misquoting him, but I think he was saying, this is all about laying the foundations of being able to do greater things by getting the basic infrastructure of being able to reuse these rockets down right. Is that correct? Do you have a similar starting point from him and your thinking process?
I think there's certainly some similarities of opinion. I think both Jeff and I believe that it's important for the future to be a spacefaring civilization and ultimately be out there among the stars. And I think that's the exciting, inspiring future that I think certainly people in this room want, and anyone.
Well, particularly after seeing that the asteroids are going to destroy this planet. I mean,
I don't view it as I think when I say multi-planet species, like that's really what we want to be. It's not like still being a single planet species, but moving planets. It's really being a multi-planet species. And having civilization and life as we know it extend beyond Earth to the rest of the solar system and ultimately to other star systems. I think that's the thing. That's the future that's exciting and inspiring. And I think that's what, you need things like that to be glad to wake up in the morning. Like life can't be just about solving problems. Like there have to be things that are inspiring and exciting that make you glad to be alive.
So what, in the immediate time frame, what is your goal for SpaceX now that you've done this, which is a huge accomplishment? What is the plan for you in the immediate time and then the longer range?
Sure. So so we plan to refly one of the landed rocket boosters, hopefully in about 2 or 3 months, something like that. And then so that'll be an important milestone. So far, the stages are looking like quite good, even though they come through quite. There's a really difficult re-entry situation, but they're looking like they're in good shape. And we now have 4 of them, so we want to start reflying them, towards the end of summer, and then hopefully. By the end of this year, we'll be launching Falcon Heavy, which will be the most powerful rocket in the world by more than a factor of 2. Mm-hmm. So Falcon Heavy will be on the order of 5 million pounds of thrust on liftoff, which is about 2/3 the size of a Saturn V.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
that's the rocket that took the astronauts to the moon.
Right. Exactly.
So,
in fact, we're launching from the same pad, from the Apollo 11 pad.
Wow,
yeah.
That's amazing. So you're hoping to launch that Falcon Heavy by the end of this year, you said?
Yeah, that's our aspiration.
That's somewhat of a delay from when you first hoped to launch it, right?
But I mean, it's not like we had a lot of pressing customers who wanted us to launch it.
Okay.
So in fact, the first launch will not have any operational satellites. It'll be a demonstration launch. Mm-hmm. And the first operational flights where customers actually want us to launch it are next year. Whereas there's a lot of customers who want us to launch Falcon 9. So about a quarter of our flights are for NASA, but 3/4 are for commercial satellites, like broadcast and communication satellites, or science missions for other countries. And there's quite a backlog. And we had an issue with the rocket last year, so that put about a 6-month hold in our schedule. So we're sort of backlogged on our launches, and we're trying to get them out as quickly as we can, and service our customers. The launches will take place, every 2 to 4 weeks. There's quite a high launch cadence.
That's a much faster cadence than NASA had, right?
Yeah, it'll be more launches than anything else in the world. So more than Russia, more than Europe, more than China by next year, certainly.
And largely to deliver customers' satellites.
Yeah, there's a lot of broadcast and communication satellites that are going to geosynchronous orbit, mm-hmm. And then we'll also be launching the new Iridium constellation. Mm-hmm. So the Iridium's got a next generation mm-hmm. Constellation of satellites. I think 60 or 70 satellites, quite decent sized satellites. That'll be like many orders of magnitude improvement over the current Iridium system. So we'll be able to have global broadband. So that'll be a whole bunch of launches, and then next year we'll be flying Dragon version 2, which is the one that's capable of taking up to 7 astronauts to the space station. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Dragon 2 really it's a propulsive lander as well, and it'll be it's intended to carry astronauts to the space station, but it's also capable of being a general science delivery platform to anywhere in the solar system. So
where are you going with it?
Well, we're going to send one to Mars in 2018. Okay.
Now, let's talk about
wait. 2018, that's for sure.
Yeah, a couple of years.
Okay. Now, will you be on that flight?
No.
You have talked about this. You said you want to die on Mars, just not on landing, right? Is that correct?
Well, I mean, I think if you're going to choose a place to die, then Mars is probably, not a bad choice.
All right.
But you're not ready.
It's not some sort of Martian death wish or something. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to be born on Earth, die on Mars.
So sending this up to Mars 2018, right? Sending this up to Mars 2018, when will someone like you get there from your plans?
Sure. So the 2018 mission would be our Dragon version 2.
Right.
And that I wouldn't recommend traveling to Mars in that, because I mean it has the interior volume of a large SUV.
Okay.
And the trip for Dragon would be on the order of 6 months. It's a long time to spend in an SUV, I think. It can be done, but probably not ideal. And it also doesn't have the capability of getting back to Earth.
Right.
That seems more important than the space.
So, yeah, we can put that in the fine print.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's like the side effects in a drug ad.
By the way,
We
cannot get back to Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw the movie. We saw what happened. He got back.
Yeah. So it was good. I actually enjoyed the movie. So.
Do you think he could have gotten back like that? Was that plausible?
Well, I thought there was some connection. It was like 80% scientifically correct.
Okay.
But it did connect a series of improbable events.
Such as?
Say. Well, I mean, I don't think you can sort of just take off from Mars on an unguided rocket, really, and then prick your finger on the spacesuit and navigate to a spaceship. Right? Yeah. Not impossible, just extremely unlikely.
So the Sandra Bullock movie.
But if you're Matt Damon, maybe?
Maybe. You have some mad skills, for sure.
So when will people like yourself get there? And I assume you'll be first in line for that.
Yeah, so later this year in September at the IAC, which is the big sort of world space conference, industry space conference, I'm going to be presenting the architecture for Mars colonization. So I think what really matters is being able to transport large numbers of people and ultimately millions of tons of cargo to Mars. And that's what's necessary in order to create a self-sustaining, not really self-sustaining, but a growing city on Mars.
I'm curious, have you been to space yet?
No.
Why? I mean, you could just go up, right, for a little bit, or not?
I could, I suppose. Yeah.
No? Why haven't you? Like
I
walked
probably
around
will
the
at some
moon or
point.
something? Or
Yeah, well, yeah, probably will.
will you do a moon test
well.
before you go to Mars?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably, I don't know, go to orbit in 4 or 5 years or something like that.
But
again, space and orbit are very different things. You know.
But on the Mars thing, would you send up 2 or 3, whether it's you or not? I kind of would prefer it if you tried it, frankly, but
Sure.
Because it would be exciting. But would you send up some people before you do this whole architecture for colonizing Mars? Just a handful of people to kind of see what.
I mean, the basic game plan is like we're going to send a mission to Mars with every Mars opportunity from 2018 onwards. So, and they occur approximately every 26 months. So, we're establishing cargo flights to Mars that people can count on for cargo. And it's like I said, the Earth-Mars orbital rendezvous is only every 26 months. So there's one in 2018, there'll be another one in 2020. And I think if things go according to plan, we should be able to launch people probably in 2024 with arrival in 2025.
Soon.
Is that a more certain schedule than United Airlines?
Well, I don't know.
Well, he hasn't
there's
been on
certainly some
United
uncertainties
Airlines for
associated with that.
So let's. I'm going to shift.
Anyway, that's the game plan. Like approximately 2024 to do the first to launch the first of the Mars colonial transport system.
I want to get back to what you said earlier about a multi.
This will be a very big rocket.
Okay, very big, bigger than the Saturn V.
Yes.
Twice as big, or what?
September, I'll tell you.
Not going to say anything till September? Come on.
Very big.
Come on.
Has to be very big.
How big is very big?
So big.
Do you think we should abandon the Earth at some point?
No, I think that's great.
But you have said things.
Why would we abandon Earth? It's really nice here.
You've said things about we may have to abandon the Earth, so it's good to have a plan B. You've said that before.
No, that was Bezos.
I think that's
Bezos.
maybe, I don't know, but it wasn't me.
All right, okay.
Wasn't me, like Shaggy.
Right. So let's move to things on this earth. Let's move to Hyperloop, Tesla, other things. But let's talk about Tesla first. Sure. Where do you feel like the company is at this point? And there's been lots of activity in self-driving cars, in autonomous, semi-autonomous. How do you look at how everybody's jumped in? Google, Apple, others, and all the car manufacturers.
Yeah, I mean, there have been so many announcements of like autonomous EV startups. I'm waiting for my mom to announce one.
Okay.
It's like, Mom, you too. I mean, there's a lot. So, yeah, I mean, in the U.S. alone, there are 4, I think maybe 5 China-funded EV startups.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
at the $1 billion plus level, like serious funding. And there's a bunch of startups, and then of course the car industry as a whole seems to be moving in that direction. Mm-hmm. Volkswagen just, I think, announced a huge battery factory that they're going to build. And I think these are all good. It's good for the industry to be moving towards sustainable transport as quickly as possible. We open sourced our patents to try to be helpful in that regard. And yeah, so it's encouraging to see all this activity. From a Tesla standpoint, we want to take a set of actions that are likely to accelerate the advent of sustainable energy. Scale up production as fast as we can. So we accelerated plans for, and so we want to try to get to 500,000 cars in total in kind of the 2018 timeframe, which is an aggressive schedule, but I think achievable. And then maybe 1 million cars a year by 2020. I can see I think a pretty clear path to get there. Autonomy is obviously extremely important. People are going to want autonomy. It's going to be odd to have a car without autonomy in the future. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's.
So what are you
scaling up?
How do you look at all these efforts? Not your mother, but
yeah, my mom's. Yeah,
she's not going to do it. She may do a rocket situation, but how do you look at each of them? Let's go through them. What Google is doing. How do you assess what they're doing when you're looking at it? Because there'll be competitors at some point. These are all.
What Google's done a great job of showing the potential of autonomous transport.
Right.
But they're not a car company, so they would potentially license their technology to other car companies. And I think they announced something with Fiat. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't say Google's a competitor because they're not a car company.
Right.
Apple?
Yeah, that'll be more direct.
That'll be more direct?
Yeah.
You can tell that by the hiring pattern and that
absolutely.
kind of stuff? Yeah. So what do you... Okay, so they're going to be more direct. How do you assess it?
I mean, I say I think it's great that they're doing this, and I hope it works out.
What's the time frame for them, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think they should have embarked upon this project sooner, actually. Mm-hmm. But I don't know when they. I mean, they don't share with me the details of their production plans. But I don't think it's going to be. I don't think they'll be in volume production sooner than maybe 2020. That'll be like the soonest.
And is that too late? When you say they should have embarked sooner, is that because 2020 will be too late to stop you or beat you or compete with you or what?
No, it's just like it's a missed opportunity. It's just
it'll be over by 2020?
No, it's not. It's just like it's a couple of years. I think they'll probably make a good car and probably be successful. The car industry is very big, so it's not as though there's one company to the exclusion of others. I mean, there's like a dozen car companies in the world of significance. So, and the most that any company has is approximately 10% market share. So it's not like somebody comes up with a car and they're suddenly like they kill everyone else. It's not that way. And the sheer scale of automotive manufacturing is just, it's hard to appreciate until you see the plants. I mean, they're gigantic.
Yeah,
like the industrial,
I have seen the plants.
Yeah, I mean, the sheer size of the industrial infrastructure is staggering.
Not just the assembly plant, but everything else that goes.
Yeah, the supply chain, exactly. The assembly plant is just a little
engine
tip of the
plant.
iceberg, really.
Yeah,
The assembly plant is literally the tip of the iceberg.
Phenomenal.
The supply chain is, once you go to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 suppliers, that's probably an order of magnitude more than the final assembly.
So you think Google will not be a competitor? Apple probably will be a direct competitor.
Yeah, sure.
What about the car companies?
I think they'll all be competitors. Yeah, sure.
Who do you see out there that has done a nice job so far? Mercedes or
GM?
Of what?
of a competitive car?
Of the incumbents.
A potentially competitive car, I guess.
I mean, I don't think any of the car companies thus far have made a really great electric car. I mean, you tell me if you disagree, but I don't think yet that any of them have made a great electric car.
Okay.
They, presumably will continue to improve on what they've done so far, and then at some point they may make a car that's a great car, but no, they haven't done that yet.
Can I ask you about batteries for a second?
Yeah, sure.
So you're building this gigafactory, right? It's built.
It's not completely built.
Okay, but part of it's up and running.
A big chunk of it's built, yeah.
Part of it's up and running.
It's a really gigantic thing. It's like when the gigafactory's done, it'll be the largest footprint building of any kind in the world. Of any kind, not just factories, literally of any kind.
What is this? The largest rocket, the largest building? I mean...
Well, I mean, I think it's not scale for scale's sake. It's just like if you say, well, we want to accomplish these goals, then you kind of have to make a big thing. So,
okay. You've got this big thing. It's this big, giant building.
Right.
Yeah.
It's going to make batteries. The batteries it's going to make are lithium.
We're going to have an opening. Well, it's not technically an opening party since it's been operating for a little while, but we're going to have a party soon. You guys maybe want to come?
We can come? All right,
Yeah,
good.
sure.
We'll come to the
Can they-
battery
it's
party.
pretty-
But they can't
I
come.
love
It's worth seeing. This
They
is
can't
like
come, right? Just
this is crazy.
No.
This is like an alien dreadnought. It's really nutty.
Because I love a battery party, but
Yeah.
right, but
talk about where it's going.
are these lithium-ion batteries?
Yeah, sure.
So they're the same batteries that's in our phone?
No.
No. Please explain.
Yeah. So lithium.
Have you made a battery breakthrough is something I'm interested in.
Yeah, I mean, generally there's so much nonsense out there about batteries. Like you can believe about 1% of what you read. Maybe. Lithium ion covers a very broad range of technologies, and you can have an enormous difference in the power density and the energy density and the cycle life between one chemistry and another. They can be really enormously different. What you really actually want to ask is what is the cathode and what is the anode?
Right.
So in our case,
That's right.
Okay. I just put it in
the lithium is
PlayStation
actually
for my
2% of the cell mass. So it's like the salt in the salad. It's a very small amount of the cell mass and a fairly small amount of the cost. But it sounds like it's big because it's called lithium ion, but it really, like our battery should be called nickel graphite because it's mostly nickel and graphite.
Okay, and
it's nickel, cobalt, aluminum,
but battery
a few other little things, and graphite with a silicon oxide layer.
Battery
on the anode.
efficiency or power, the power that you can store in a certain mass seems to be move very slowly, at least compared to we're used to Moore's law pushing integrated circuits faster. Batteries kind of are always in our consumer devices always lagging behind. You've built this giant thing, the biggest building in the world it's ever seen.
It's not fully built, but yes, it's.
You're building it. Your whole business depends on batteries in these cars. Have you figured out a way to do some significant increase in the yield of energy from a given amount of space in the battery?
Well, yeah, I mean, the energy density is increasing sort of maybe on the order of like 5-ish% per year. And it doesn't sound like much, but you add that up over a number of years with compound interest, it ends up being quite a significant number. And a lot of people sort of think that, oh, well, we just sort of cobbled together some laptop batteries and somehow made a great car. But if it was that easy, then I think we would have quite a few competitors who did the same thing. But it's really quite a lot harder than that. It's a cylindrical form factor, but the internals of the battery are quite different from what you would find in a laptop. And will be increasingly different with what's built at the Gigafactory, which is highly optimized for automotive, and has improved energy density. But mostly, it's not the energy density that's the issue, because you can if you buy a Model S today, the range is around 300 miles, and that's quite a lot. So it's pretty rare that people really need to go more than 300 miles at a time without stopping.
Right.
So I don't think we really have a range issue. And we could make a 400-mile range car today. Like, that wouldn't be too big of a deal. What really matters is decreasing the cost per unit of energy of the battery packs, so you can make the car affordable. That's actually the important thing. So there's really two main dimensions along which cost optimization and making something available to the mass market can be achieved. One is design iteration, going through multiple versions of something, and then the other is economies of scale. And you kind of need both of those things in order to make a compelling mass market product. And you look at like cell phones and how many design iterations have we gone through with cell phones, and look at the scale at which they're made, which is enormous, and that's what enables everyone to have a supercomputer in their pocket.
So speaking of that, the sales, when we're talking about the sales, you have booked how many orders for?
It's on the order of 400,000.
400,000. So
400,
obviously, consumer interest and a promise. A lot of it around you, around the idea of you and Tesla and the excitement. They're not booking.
It was quite surprising, actually. I mean, because we didn't do any advertising, or there was no guerrilla marketing or anything. It was just basically like, yeah, we're going to have this webcast. There were only about 1,000 people in the audience, and it really caught us by surprise. But I think when you have a product that really resonates with customers, the word of mouth grows like wildfire, and that seems to be what.
Yeah, but it's a little bit. I mean, honestly, in some groups of, especially men in Silicon Valley, if you show up and read like a label of a peanut jar, they'd be thrilled with the situation. So, I mean, a lot of this does base around you, like the idea of you and the excitement around this exciting entrepreneur. Is that enough to get it to this massive company you've been hoping to? The idea of this is the Elon promise, or it's the...
Well, I think actually it's not so much, I mean, I sort of... I mean, I'm not sure. I think I deserve less credit than that. Actually, I mean, what Tesla's done, and we have a phenomenal team. There's like 15,000 people at the company. Worked super hard to create compelling products, to create great cars. And we started off with the Roadster, and then the Model S. And the Model S was rated, by Consumer Reports as the best car ever. Got the Model X, which has had some teething issues, but. I think is now at the point where it's really starting to. I think it's really, quite sublime at this point, and so people look at that and say, okay, well, if Tesla's made these cars, then probably the next car they make is going to be,
the
also,
less expensive one.
Also a great car, and so it'll be a great car, but it'll be affordable. And it's like, great, okay, that sounds like something I want.
So this next car, the price is.
It's starting at $35,000. Yeah.
Okay, affordable. Okay,
when do you
get to the really affordable? The way down much lower than that?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to point out that 35,000, particularly when factoring in the lower cost of electricity versus
Right.
gasoline, and that the maintenance cost is much less. You don't have to have oil changes. You never need to replace your brakes because the car uses regenerative braking, so the brakes last as long as the car does. It's basically you just need to replace the tires. Like that's about all. So the operational cost of the car is much lower fundamentally than a gasoline car, and so. I think the average price for cars, for gasoline cars, is around 30, 32, something like that. Yeah, I mean there are starting prices that are lower, but when people pick options, I believe it's in around 32 or so in the U.S. So we're pretty close to that average.
But that's your base price, right? I mean,
yeah, but it's going to be a great
may
car.
not be the ASP for the car.
No, but it's going to be a great car even at 35. So it's like even if you order no options at all, it'll be great.
But you're likely to have a mix where the average car that you actually sells for a little more than that.
Yes, probably. It's probably going to be probably going to be some higher number. But it's really important to emphasize like 35. If somebody orders the $35,000 car, they'll be very happy. Like it's not like you need to order a bunch of options without which the car is not good.
That car will have autonomous for 35.
I have I'm going to do another Tesla event, maybe at the end of the year, talk more about that.
And
Well,
say?
so you could start here.
It will be real big news if I start here.
We don't mind that.
Let me just say that we're going to do the obvious thing.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
It's really obvious.
So cup holders, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant.
brilliant.
Those things are nuanced.
All right, absolutely. Let's which I want to get it clear what your thoughts are, because it's mostly Elon's scared of robots. I mean, that kind of thing. Or how do you?
I'm scared of robots.
Or artificial intelligence. Can you clarify exactly what the issue you have now?
And you deserve the background. We've been talking to Jeff Bezos, Sundar Pichai. We talked to Mark Fields from Ford about it.
Might show up for
the Facebook folks. There certainly seems to be in the tech companies a big, tremendous new drive or interest to believing there will be all competing
good.
for intelligent assistance.
And it's good. It'll make your
all
life
that.
better. And
Make your life better.
sometimes technology
Siri is going to suddenly get smart. Microsoft's one is going to get smart. Google is going to cream them all.
It's largely a happy version of this. Sometimes technology hurts you, but not as much as it helps you. That's really.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of conversation here about that.
Yeah, sure.
And you've staked out a slightly different position. So can you talk about that?
Well, I mean, I think my sort of full position would require quite a long explanation. I mean, I am concerned about certain directions that AI could take that would be not good for the future. I mean, I think it would be fair to say that not all AI futures are benign, not all.
Okay.
And so if you have something, if we create some digital superintelligence that exceeds us in every way by a lot, it's very important that that be benign. And so actually with a few others, I created OpenAI, which is an AI. It's a nonprofit actually. There's no. I think the governance structure here is important. So we want to make sure that there was not some fiduciary duty to generate, profit off of the AI technology that's developed. So we created this 501c3, but I think it's quite different from. I mean, a lot of sort of 501c3s are, they don't have a high sense of urgency, and they're not like, they're not really sort of developing technology at a fast pace. But OpenAI is. So OpenAI has a very high sense of urgency, and I think that the people that have joined are really, really amazing. And the intent with OpenAI is to democratize AI power. There's a quote that I love from Lord Acton. He was the guy that came up with power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, which is that freedom consists of the distribution of power and despotism in its concentration. And so I think it's important, if we have this incredible power of AI, that it not be concentrated in the hands of a few and potentially lead to a world that we don't want.
And what world is that? What do you foresee that when you see it?
It's difficult. I mean, it's called the singularity because it's difficult to predict exactly what future that might be. Except I don't know a lot of people who love the idea of living under a despot. I don't think people generally choose to live in a democracy over a dictatorship.
And the despot would be the computer?
Or the people controlling the computer.
And do you worry specifically about any of these companies I mentioned, who've all seemed to now kind of be pivoting toward this as the battleground in the next 10 years?
I won't name a name, but there is only one.
There's only one you're worried about. And they're not preoccupied with making a car that will compete with you, I assume.
There's only one.
And what? Tell me. This is an interesting.
It's not about competing. It's this is sort of like what would be the point of competing for, mutual destruction? It's like It's not about competing. It's really just about trying to increase the probability that the future will be good. That's all. So the goal of OpenAI is really just to take the set of actions that are most likely to improve the positive futures. Like, you can think of the future as a set of probability streams that branch out and then converge, collapse down to a particular event, and then branch out again. And there's a certain set of probabilities associated with the future being positive and different flavors of that. And at OpenAI, we want to try to do whatever we can to increase the probability of the good futures happening. I think that's really what we're trying to do there.
Do you worry that by making this open, some bad actors may use some of what has been developed to do bad stuff with the power of AI?
Yeah, I mean that is certainly a good rebuttal to that. However, I think if AI power is widely distributed, and there's not, say, one entity that has some super AI that is 1,000,000 times smarter than anything else. If instead the AI power is broadly distributed, and to the degree that we can link AI power to each individual's will, it's like you would have your AI agent, and everyone would have their sort of AI agent, and then if somebody did try to do something really terrible, well, then the collective will of others could overcome that bad actor. Which you can't do if there's one AI that's 1,000,000 times better than everything else.
And it's proprietary.
And it's either has its own will, or more likely, at least in the beginning, is controlled by some small set of people. So I think that's really the risk. I mean, there's always been these arguments like what's the best form of government? Big fan of, I think it was Churchill, democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others.
Right.
So speaking of that, this election, you are from...
Oh, no.
No. Yes. How does that strike you, what's happening now? You've come to this country, you're a naturalized citizen?
I think I'm glad that the framers of the Constitution saw fit to ensure that the president was someone who was captain of a large ship with a small rudder.
Okay. And?
There's a limit to how much harm any given president.
Are you sure about that?
Oh, yeah.
So you're not worried about, are you backing either of the candidates at this point?
I'm trying to stay out of this situation.
Because?
I don't think that's the finest moment in our democracy.
Well, given that it's not the finest moment in our democracy, do you think the best thing is to stay out? Or
we'll see.
To get in and
I'm not sure what I could do to
head off the worst.
I'm not sure how much influence I could have as one person on the outcome. So, I mean, if I think I could make a difference, I would probably do something. But like I said, I think I'm just glad that being the U.S. president is like being captain of a large ship with a small rudder. And so there's just a limit to how much good or bad a president can actually do. I mean, obviously, if a president could make the economy great, and there was like a button they could press, they'd be pressing that button at the speed of light. So, you know, they can't. They can't just magically make the economy good. No president wants the economy bad ever, but they, you know, like there's just a limit to how much they can do, you know, I guess there is the nuclear thing, which is
yeah, the nuclear thing. I guess there is the nuclear thing.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think people, I don't think we would like just arbitrarily launch nuclear missiles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one would
The
hope.
president can do that.
I don't think so.
President's
I still don't think that means you can just launch nuclear missiles whenever you want.
Yeah.
I think Congress would be like quite upset about that, and
they might not be consulted.
yeah, but I think like the military would be like, yeah, we really think Congress should be consulted on it before we launch a
Yeah.
That might happen.
preemptive
That could
nuclear
happen.
strike.
Are you willing? You're basing your faith in that, though.
I'm quite confident that the military would not just, you know, randomly agree to launching nuclear missiles at somebody.
Well, that's calming.
This is pretty comforting, yeah.
We're going to put up just very quickly, we'll end on Hyperloop. You've been involved with it. Your level of involvement is what at this point? Just
Yeah, I know
visionary?
it's a bit confusing because
You talked about it when you were here last time.
yeah, I actually came up with the idea. I came up with an initial idea which turned out to be wrong. It wouldn't work several years ago, and then but I sort of shot my mouth off and said, oh, I feel like I have an idea that would work, and it turned out that didn't work. But with a lot of iteration, was able to come up with something where the physics hangs together, and then published the paper and just said, like, look, anyone who wants to do this is great. Go, you know, be my guest, because I sort of have my plate full running Tesla and SpaceX.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think it'd be great. I mean, it'd be great to have any interesting new transport solutions, anything that gets people to their destination in a way that's safer, costs less, is more convenient. That'd be great. I mean, and so I think probably the most valuable thing that the Hyperloop paper that I published has done is to spur thinking in terms of new transportation systems. So it's not just, oh, let's, you know, have a fast train. Okay, that's not. I don't see what the point of that is. You know, like we should really be trying to think of something that's. I think particularly in California, like we should be like saying, hey, what is the best? Well, let's invent something new that's way better than anything else.
Do you want to shoot your mouth off about that?
You know, I mean, I'm not an investor in any of the companies that are working on it, and I've tried to be neutral because I'm trying not to favor one company over another, but just to encourage anyone that is interested to say that, you know, try to give them moral support, you know, and I hope they succeed. The only thing that I am doing on the Hyperloop front is like we're holding a student competition, and the student competition is really just aimed towards encouraging students to think about exciting new transport methods. And it's totally cool if they want to like do some architecture that's different from what I proposed in Hyperloop. And in fact, the winning team at the student competition that we held earlier this year used a different suspension mechanism than what I proposed, which is I proposed using essentially taking the air that builds up on the nose from the compressor and flowing that through air skis so that you simultaneously remove the drag from the nose and provide a means of suspending the pod And that's also something that works well even at supersonic velocities. You can go. It's been demonstrated up to Mach 1.1 in terms of using air bearings as.
But they use something different.
Yeah, basically electromagnetic suspension. The reason I didn't suggest sort of any kind of magnetic suspension is that it's very important that the cost of the tube be minimized. So you really want, because the pod is cheap, the tube is expensive. So if you want to go, say, 400 miles and in two directions, so you've got 800 miles of tube. The critical economic optimization parameter is the cost of the tube. So you want that tube to be as low cost as possible. And so if you do anything that requires action on the tube side, it's going to make that tube much more expensive. So if you use air bearings, it doesn't change. Like, that's real cheap. Yeah, so...
Do you think this is going to happen?
Yeah, I think something like that. I think something will happen in the future. I think if the companies that are trying to make it happen now, if for whatever reason that doesn't work out, then I think I might do something myself in the future. I don't want to do something. I don't want to sort of front run them. It's like, say, here's this free idea, and then meanwhile I go and do it myself. That wouldn't be nice. But if a bunch of people, if companies don't try it and it doesn't work out, then I think I'll try to just at least do a demonstration system.
Okay, last question. Do you think tech has gotten more serious? How do you look at the tech landscape as someone who's, well known? You probably qualify as a visionary. The concept, where do you imagine we are right now in the tech space? And then we'll get to questions from the audience.
I think there's a lot of innovation happening in many different areas. The advancements in AI, I think, are quite astonishing. The advancements in genetics are amazing. So I think that there is a lot of innovation going on. I think that there's probably a few too many talented entrepreneurs in kind of the internet space, and I think their talent actually would be better served in some other industries. But I do think that, I don't think we're like facing some sort of low innovation period or anything like that. I think there's a lot of innovation going on.
They need to move to other...
I just think that, like, if you had some ideal distribution, it would probably be fewer. Like, there's just a lot of talent focused on the internet, and probably some of that talent would it'd be better to have some of that talent in other industries. That's about all. But there's tremendous amount of innovation that's happening. It's something that I think is going to be quite important. And there's not. I don't know of a company that's working on it seriously is a neural lace. So anyway, going back to the AI situation, this is quite an important debate. Like, if you assume any rate of advancement in AI, we will be left behind by a lot. And so then we could be in, benign situation, but even the benign situation, if you have if you have ultra intelligent AI, we would be, so far below them in intelligence that it would be like, a pet, basically.
Cat, that's what I was thinking.
Like a pet.
Cat.
Like a cat.
Elon
like
the
a house cat. Yeah, it would be like the house cat.
Right.
It's not the end of the world, It's just, sort of pet.
You've seen the movie. It could be. Yeah.
It could be. But honestly, that would be the benign scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And
so house cat is okay.
I don't love the idea of being a house cat.
Okay.
But
so what's the solution?
Yeah. So I think I think it's to essentially. I think one of the solution that seems maybe the best one is to have an AI layer. If you think of like you've got your limbic system, a digital layer, a sort of a third layer above the cortex that could work well and symbiotically with you. I mean, just as your cortex works symbiotically with your limbic system, your sort of a third digital layer could work symbiotically with the rest.
This is something that's surgically inserted or bred into the species, or what?
The fundamental limitation is input-output. So we already have, we're already a cyborg. It's just that, I mean, you have a digital version of yourself or partial version of yourself online in the form of your emails and your social media and all the things that you do. And you have basically superpowers in that with your computer and your phone and the applications that are there. You have more power than the President of the United States had 20 years ago. Like you can answer any question, you can video conference with anyone anywhere, you can send a message to millions of people instantly. You know, you can just do incredible things. And but the constraint is input output. So we're I/O bound, particularly output bound. I mean, like your output level is so low. It's like particularly on a phone, like your two thumbs just sort of tapping away. This is ridiculously slow. Our input is much better because we have a high bandwidth visual interface to the brain. Like our eyes take in a lot of data. So there's many orders of magnitude difference between input and output. So mostly, effectively merging in a symbiotic way with digital intelligence revolves around eliminating the I/O constraint. So it'd be some sort of direct cortical interface.
And you called it a neural lace?
Neural lace, yeah.
It's totally not Google Glass, right?
No, I'm talking about something
but it's like you wear it? Or you...
No, I mean, it would be, I mean, there are a few ways to approach this, but some sort of interface directly with your cortical neurons particularly.
But doesn't that imply surgical insertion?
Not necessarily. You could go through the veins and arteries because that provides a complete roadway to all of your neurons. Your neurons are very heavy users of energy, so they need high blood flow. So you automatically, with your veins and arteries, have a road network to your neurons.
Still some kind of surgery, right?
Yes, but you could insert something, basically, into the jugular and have. It gets macabre, but
it sounds really easy and
it doesn't involve
risk-free.
It doesn't involve like chopping your skull off or anything like that.
That's good.
Yeah.
And plus, you're not a house cat anymore, right?
Not a house cat. So,
right.
I mean, essentially, if we can figure out how to establish a high bandwidth neural interface
with ourselves,
with your digital self, effectively, then you're no longer a house cat.
All right. On that note.
Well, just one.
The best outcome, I think.
Are you interested in exploring this possibility that you have just laid?
Somebody's got to do it. I'm not saying that I will, but somebody's got to do it. I mean, somebody should do it, and I mean, if somebody doesn't do it, then I think I should probably do it. But
and the goal of this is to prevent there being an external AI, particularly one controlled by a small group of people that could be so much more powerful and intelligent than we are that the house cat
it would be godlike in
situation
escapability. Yeah.
Well, this has been really cheerful. Thank you.
Yeah. But if we can establish...
I was worried about asteroids at the beginning of this.
I mean, asteroids are a low probability existential threat on the time scale that's relevant to us.
Okay.
Okay. This is different. This requires urgency.
So what do you do for fun?
Yes, this is much more
Elon,
urgent.
what do you do for fun? What do you do? Anything?
I play video games with my kids.
All right, that sounds good. Let's get some questions from Elon. Elon the house cat.
I watch movies, that
Right.
kind of thing, normal things.
Why don't we start over here?
Yeah, hi. I think this last question by Carl just did that. I want to know, how do you live through the stress that kind of conversations we just heard that you went through, and kind of ambitions that you carry, and then how do you adjust to the everyday work-life balance, etc., things that in your life? So a little bit of your personal side, actually.
So you're very busy. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I am sort of in kind of work triage mode a lot of the time. So, I don't know, it seems to be, as long as there's not like a crisis simultaneously at SpaceX and Tesla, it's okay. But, companies are, I mean, the situation in any given company, particularly when, if it's sort of growing fast and sort of quasi-startup, it's somewhat sinusoidal. So that, I mean, it's okay if the waves don't crest together. When that does happen, then that's a huge strain. But right now things are like, motoring along okay, and I have like the context loaded for both companies, and I can sort of see a path to a good outcome. So I feel pretty good right now. But there've been super stressful times in the past, and then I always try to reserve time for my kids because I love hanging out with them. Like, I mean, kids are really great. I mean, they're like the 99% of the time they make you happier. Their kids are awesome.
Yeah. Then there's that 1%.
1%, 1%. But like it's of anything in my life, I would say, kids by far make me the happiest. I don't know if
I agree.
Yeah, it's great.
I agree.
Yeah.
So
hang out with them, like things like a lot of times kids are kind of in their own world, so you don't need to they don't want to talk to their dad for hours on end, generally.
I've noticed that.
Yeah. So I can be in the same room with them. They can talk to me from time to time, but I can get some emails done, just get some work done, and then whenever they want to talk to me, they can. And then we try to do things like travel places, and like I said, we play video games together. Or actually, on Monday we went to the new Harry Potter land at Universal. It was quite fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that
somebody from Universal just clapped.
Yeah. Whoever was in charge of Harry Potter land did a great job. It's really good.
Yeah, it is good.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
The butterbeer is amazing.
Yeah, I was just saying the butterbeer.
The butterbeer is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right here.
Over here.
Hi, my name is Evan Burns. I'm the founder of Odyssey, and I hope into the future to be in something in the space industry. And my curiosity is, you've talked about SpaceX getting into many different businesses, for example, global Wi-Fi through launching many satellites. Do you hope SpaceX becomes a platform for others to launch businesses, or do you see SpaceX being a business that launches many business lines?
Well, I mean, the general strategy of SpaceX is to, we clearly need a lot of money in order to develop the transport system to establish a city on Mars. So, we're kind of gathering revenue, Earth-based revenue that's, we're trying to maximize
Is there some other
Earth revenue.
revenue?
Well, right now it's only Earth, so we've got to maximize Earth revenue as it relates to space, as it relates to rockets and spacecraft. So, but I think assuming SpaceX is able to transport large numbers of people and goods to Mars, it will be an enormous because there's going to be so much to do. Everything from creating the first iron ore refinery to the first pizza joint to, something that doesn't even exist on Earth. It's kind of like when the Union Pacific crossed, and everybody thought, Union Pacific, what a stupid idea. There's nobody living in California. Well, okay, now there's quite a lot of people living in California. So just having it, you need the transport link. And so what SpaceX is trying to do is establish an environment for entrepreneurs on Mars to flourish. And I think that will be an amazing expansion of entrepreneurial.
How long would it take to deliver a pizza from Mars?
Well, it's going to be a little cold, I think. But I mean, we can certainly see a way to get to Mars in under 3 months. And I think ultimately you'll be able to get to Mars in under a month. It does get exponentially difficult as you reduce the time. But 3 months is a way to think of it. And I think that's probably, that's really where SpaceX will, I think, create a great environment for entrepreneurial potential. Yeah.
Thanks.
Nilay?
I hope Domino's does not get to Mars. Please don't let it.
We'll have a special Mars
I
pizza.
assume you're going to be. I'm assuming you're going to be king of Mars. but go
Nilay.
ahead.
So you're obviously very ambitious. That's led to some really ambitious deadlines that have been missed. So Falcon Heavy was originally 2012. The Model X was a little bit delayed. The Model X was delayed. The Model 3 seems to be stretching. But the Model 3 in particular is a consumer product. You're taking money from people against a really aggressive production schedule and a huge amount of orders. What are you going to do to hit your deadlines on that? Because it's real consumers this time and a big class of people.
Sure. I think the biggest thing is just designing the car for manufacturing. So in the case of Model S, like the Model S was the first time we'd really built a car. A whole car. Like with the Roadster, Lotus did the body and chassis, we did the powertrain, then we did the sort of final installation of the powertrain to the chassis. But the Model S was the first time we made a car. So we were just trying to make a great car, but we had no idea like what it meant to design something to be manufacturable. So the Model S is super hard to make, and then the Model X is built off of the Model S platform, except it's got a bunch of other whiz-bang technologies that make it even harder to build. So. Definitely we want to do the opposite of what we did with the X, which is make something that is going to be a lot simpler, but still a car that people will love, and where every design decision is factoring in the manufacturability, and making sure that when we design something, that you can manufacture it at volume at an affordable price in the schedule that we're targeting. One of the things that makes a car very difficult, particularly if it's a new car, is that it's an integrated product with several thousand unique components. So we are somewhat at the mercy of whatever the slowest component is. Whatever, basically, if you say go to tier 2 and 3 suppliers, they end up being several thousand suppliers. So things move as fast as the least lucky and least competent supplier. But just, and you can think of like any natural disaster you care to name, all of those things have happened to our suppliers. Their factory has burnt down, there's been an earthquake, there's been a tsunami, there's been massive hail, there's been a tornado, the ship sank, there was a shootout at the Mexican border, no kidding. That delayed trunk carpet at one point. Well, and we couldn't get, and the Border Patrol wouldn't give us the truck because it had bullet holes in it. We just wanted our trunk carpet. It's pretty safe. So it's like no cocaine or anything. This is good. But that shut down the production line as an example for several days. So that's the biggest issue. Is like the supply chain stuff is really tricky. And we're trying to anticipate as much of that as possible, increase our optionality so that there's more internal capability at Tesla. Not that we want to do things internally, but if a supplier is unable or unwilling to deliver the part, we can quickly make that internally. So I think the whole company is geared for that. Right now it looks like we should be able to do that. We expect to. Almost all of the Model 3 design is done, and we're aiming for pencils down basically in about 6 weeks, complete pencils down, and we're tabling all. If there are ideas for future cool things, we'll have it in version 2, version 3, in future years type of thing. So. Overall, I feel pretty good about it, and our particularly our major supplier partners have been very supportive and are on board. I mean, one thing I should say is when I sort of cite a schedule, it is actually the schedule I think is true. It's not some fake schedule that I don't think is true. So I mean, it's never it's maybe delusional. That is entirely possible. And maybe it's happened from time to time, but it's never some knowingly fake deadline ever.
So is there an event in 6 weeks where you're going to announce autonomous driving is included in the penciled down plan for the Model 3?
We're not expecting any event in 6 weeks.
Josh.
Hi. So this is kind of a weird question. I feel like you would be the guy with the right answer for it. There's a sort of a philosophic concept that a sufficiently advanced civilization will be able to create a simulation. Yeah. Maybe you've answered this before? A simulation.
I've had so many simulation discussions, it's crazy.
Okay. Because
in fact, it got to the point where basically every conversation was the AI/simulation conversation. And my brother and I finally agreed that we would ban such conversations if we were ever in a hot tub. Okay. That was like, because that really kills the magic.
Hot tub, so the idea is right. Any sufficiently advanced civilization could create, and so the theory follows that maybe we're in the simulation. Have you thought about this? And
a lot.
Are we? Are we
even in hot tubs? So much so it had to be banned from a hot tub.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not the sexiest conversation.
Are we in? Are we in?
I mean, I think here's, in my mind, the strongest argument for us being in a simulation, probably being in a simulation, I think is the following: that 40 years ago we had Pong, like 2 rectangles and a dot. That was what games were. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year. And soon we'll have virtual reality, we'll have augmented reality. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, then the games will become indistinguishable from reality. They'll be indistinguishable. Even if that rate of advancement drops by 1,000 from what it is right now, then you just say, okay, well, let's imagine it's 10,000 years in the future, which is nothing in the evolutionary scale. So given that we're clearly on a trajectory to have games that are indistinguishable from reality, and those games could be played on any set-top box or on a PC or whatever, and there would probably be billions of such computers or set-top boxes, it would seem to follow that the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
So
tell me what's wrong with that argument.
Is the answer yes?
The argument is probably. I mean, I just like, is there a flaw in that argument?
I mean, someone.
I'm not sure what the error.
No. The argument makes sense. So the assumption then is that somebody beat us to it, and this is a game.
No. There's a 1 in billions chance that this is base reality.
Oh, okay. What do you think?
Well, I think it's 1 in billions.
Okay.
Right, I mean, that seems to be like clearly what it suggests.
Right.
And actually, I mean, arguably, we should hope that that's true, because otherwise, if civilization stops advancing, then that may be due to some calamitous event that erases civilization. So maybe we should be hopeful that this is a simulation, because otherwise...
Because they could reboot it.
Well, otherwise, either we're going to create simulations that are indistinguishable from reality, or civilization will cease to exist. Those are the 2 options.
Yeah. I like those odds.
Okay.
Or it's unlikely to go into some multi-million year stasis. So it's either going to increase or decrease.
Hi, I'm Jeetu Patel from Box. 2-part question for you. One is, if you think about fully autonomous vehicles, which have passed through regulatory approvals, have passed through in-city driving in traffic conditions, how far do you think from a time frame perspective we are for that becoming reality? And number two would be, the second part of that question is, how long before you think it's either illegal or extremely prohibitively expensive for humans to drive on the road?
I mean, I really would consider autonomous driving to be basically a solved problem.
Even in cities like Beijing and...
Yeah. Actually, there's really only one area where it's like a little dodgy, and that's basically if you're at roughly the 30 to 40 miles an hour in urban environments, that's difficult to achieve in Beijing. It's like heavy traffic. In dense traffic situations, autonomy is really easy because you can just maintain a set distance from various cars. It's actually quite easy. You're very unlikely to run anyone over because you're just not moving fast enough, and you can brake in time. On highways, particularly highways that are that have barriers, so that you don't have pedestrians, that's also relatively easy. And like a Model S and Model X at this point can drive autonomously with greater safety than a person right now.
Yeah. My point is, when does it get to be where you don't need to be sitting behind a vehicle, and it actually, the way that society starts expecting this is, I can have my 75-year-old mother who doesn't speak any English or doesn't drive, be able to be transported from point A to point B by just sitting in a car by herself and being taken. I know it's technically possible, but how far do you think the regulatory approvals are for that happening?
I think we're basically less than 2 years away from complete autonomy.
Wow.
Complete. Safer than a human. However, regulators will take, I think, at least another year, and because it's going to depend on what part of the world you're in, because they will want to see billions of miles of data to show that it is statistically true that there is a substantial improvement in safety if something's autonomous versus not autonomous. I don't think that regulators will accept something that's close to, that's sort of approximately as good as a person. I think they'll have to be at least twice as good as a person, maybe 5 or 10 times, better in terms of safety, and that will have to be a statistically relevant data set. So like billions of miles over widely differing roads and situations. So I think it's like probably 3 years before it's approved from a regulatory standpoint, but less than 2 before it is technically possible.
And do you think there's a day when it's illegal to drive for humans, or
Well, I mean, we live in a democracy, so presumably that would be a function of the population deciding. I'm not in favor of banning people from driving cars. I'm in favor of freedom and not restricting what people do. But maybe the requirements for a license will get more stringent. I think that seems like maybe a good move. So you have to demonstrate a higher level of skill to drive in order to be allowed to manually drive.
Okay, very last question.
This is the last
make
question.
Make it a good one.
We're
Sorry,
Elon has to go.
Got to make it a great question.
Thinking about life on Mars again, how do you think about cultural unification, systems of government, rules of law, establishing those very early on?
Well, I think I was just declared king of Mars a moment ago.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Take it.
Yeah, thank
Run.
you. So I think most likely the form of government on Mars would be a direct democracy, not representative. So it would be people voting directly on issues. And I think that's probably better because the potential for corruption is substantially diminished in a direct versus a representative democracy. So I think that's probably what will occur. I think there's some I think I would recommend like some adjustment for the inertia of laws would be wise, in that it should probably be easier to remove a law than create one. I think, this is, I would just be like, I think that's probably good, because just laws have infinite life unless they're taken away. So I think my recommendation would be like something like, let's say 60% of people need to vote in a law, but at any point greater than 40% of people can remove it. And any law should come with a built-in sunset provision. If it's not good enough to be voted back in, maybe it shouldn't be there.
So that's the framework for government on Mars.
I mean, those would be my recommendations. The direct democracy, where it's slightly harder to put laws in place than to take them away, and where laws don't just automatically live forever.
You'll be a good king. Thank you, Elon Musk. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, nightcap, and tomorrow we have Devin Wagner, Sean Rad, Nick Denton, and our panel, Mistakes Were Made panel, and John Podesta. So I'm sorry if we've had too much content today. We have even more tomorrow. Have some drinks. Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
That was great.
Thank you.